Well, thank you again once more on behalf of the African Philanthropy Network. I wish to welcome you all to this Youth Summit. I am very blessed. I don't know, I feel blessed and happy because this conversation is starting with powerful words from Dr. Lerato, who is approaching the issue of youth philanthropy in Africa from a faith-filled perspective. You know, us in Africa, we are religious people, and the faith we put into something usually gives us the inspiration and the strength to continue going forward. So before this youth summit, we had a series of conversations. We got to meet many youths all over the world, and Africa in particular. We know communication and conversations are important because from there, we are able to get insights from other youths from around the world and see how best we can use practices that have already implemented in their own countries and see how we can work best for us in our own communities. During those conversations, we heard and we learned from youths all around Africa who were building resilience and doing philanthropic work to bring about social impact, to bring about change in their different communities. Yes, the word change has been coming up over and over since yesterday, and today is the main day we are going to talk about change. Change, as Heraclitus, a philosopher said, is the only constant. So if a society rejects change, a society cannot grow, a society cannot progress. A society that rejects change is going to be stagnant, and with stagnation, you cannot achieve your full potential. So that's the reason why today we are going to discuss systems change, technology, and innovation of youth philanthropy. My name is Vanessa Duncan, and I'm going to be a humble moderator for this conversation. So on my panel, I have a well-seasoned panel of young experts and professionals. I mean, they are so seasoned that I am afraid I am not even worthy to present them. However, the Ubuntu spirit that we all bear, I believe is going to permit me, or they are going to permit me humbly present them. So on my panel, I'm going to have Diane Pereira Souza, who is superintendent of the Community Foundation. I also have Femben Tamrat. She's a development and governance consultant. We're also going to have Ivan Atuyamba, who is the director of ULEAD Africa. And the last but not the least, David Tambie, who is a creative director at David Aquara Films.
Thank you very much, Vanessa.
Muito obrigado, Vanessa. Espero que esteja bem audível.
Good morning, good evening, everyone. So my name is Feben Tamrat, and I'm an Ethiopian. I'm currently a consultant for the government and other NGOs on topics regarding election, climate change, migration, and many other. So I'm working on this, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Femben. I don't know whether Ivan Atuyamba is available. If you are around, Ivan, please just tell us briefly what else you do apart from what I said when I was introducing you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues and comrades, and I hope that you can hear me. Yeah, as I have been introduced, my name is Ivan Atuyambe, and I'm in Arusha, Tanzania. I work at the Training Center for Development Cooperation, is a training institution in Africa that is looking at growing a crop of leaders for Africa's transformation. And I am also the director of the Africa Youth Leadership Program, which is commonly known as ULEAD Africa. Happy to be here, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I was pronouncing Ivan, but it looks like it's Ivan. So thank you.
Yes, yes, you can feel free to use either. When I'm in Europe or in Swahili land, it's Ivan. The English call me Ivan.
Good. I'll adopt the Swahili's own pronunciation, which is Ivan. So I don't know whether David is available. David, are you with us? I've been trying to reach David. So is David around? David, are you with us? If David is not around, we can always introduce him anytime he joins the meeting. So we are going to dive into the core of the matter. Since the beginning of this whole conversation, we'll be talking about the culture of giving, philanthropy, bringing change, shifting systems, youth and power. So yesterday's keynote speaker and even today's keynote speaker also mentioned about the relationship between social entrepreneurship and philanthropy. They both agree that social entrepreneurship and philanthropy go hand in hand. And in my own little research I did before this summit, I read somewhere that social entrepreneurship is the most exciting, fast changing part of philanthropy because it disrupts the status quo and transforms our world for the better. Now, our well-seasoned panelists, I know you have a lot to tell us about this. So I'm going to start with Diane, while hoping that she's getting me and that she's ready to answer this question. So I'd love to know, how can philanthropy and social entrepreneurship facilitate meaningful participation in addressing social and system change? What is your point of view? What is your take on this? Thank you, Diane, you have the floor.
Oi, pessoal, para que a gente fique na mesma página, você pode usar a tradução de português para inglês, para a gente não ter nenhum problema técnico na hora da nossa conversa. O que eu penso, né? O que eu penso sobre essa...
Think about this.
Uma pergunta muito boa.
Eu gosto
de conversar sobre o porquê nós fazemos filantropia. Por que nós tornamos empreendedores sociais.
What is the reason why we do philanthropy? What does it mean to be a social entrepreneur?
Nos conduz a caminho muito
think about what guides us to guide us in one path on another one. So what is the reasons before what are the reasons behind what we do within the society and which we are working?
Eu estou pensando em processo que ele não só está...
I'm thinking in a process that is not only...
Ele está muito além... ele está voltado para aquilo que a gente, através da filantropia, estabelecer...
It goes beyond what we think. So through philanthropy, we can establish...
Nós queremos transformar com essa ação
we can establish the change that we desire to see within our society. So this is what we think. Philanthropy helps us to bring the change that we think we should like to see in our community. Eu consigo ver que há uma coisa muito importante. Can you show, consegues perceber, mostrar, se já tinha terminado o seu pensamento, pode mostrar para o assunto.
So I'm going to ask, so I'm going to ask Femben the same question, talking about philanthropy and social entrepreneurship. So how do you think, how can philanthropy and social entrepreneurship facilitate meaningful participation in addressing social and system change?
Of our society in a philanthropic activity or coming up with an entrepreneurial ideas. The third one is to allow such people who have interest in these activities to drive the system and social change. Since we have problems regarding policy, regarding financial matters, and many more. So allowing people with such interest to drive the system change and to be involved in such case will help. So my belief is that the impact of social entrepreneurs and philanthropists is very immense, since they're taking the risks and efforts to create opportunities, positive change in the society. So focusing on these 3 points would allow the social and system change. That's my belief, yeah.
Wow, that was so insightful, Femben. What I agree with you is focusing on supporting the projects, because there are many youth in Africa who have very, very interesting and innovative projects, but because of lack of support, they never go the mile they have to go to. They are not even sustainable, because for sustainability, we need to have the means to be able to go ahead with a project or innovation. So thank you so much for these awards. We are going to continue and you are going to tell us more about how this can come about. So I'm going to hand over the floor to Ivan Atuyambe. He can tell us what his own take on this on social philanthropy, on social entrepreneurship and philanthropy is. Over to you, Ivan.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and allow me also to certainly appreciate Dr. Stigmata and the team at the Africa Philanthropy Network for putting this together. It's very rare to have a space, a conversation space for young people to talk about how they want to contribute to the well-being of society, and whether the mechanisms and systems in place really enable that. So I want to congratulate Dr. Stigmata and the team for creating this space, and look forward to even more engagement in future. I wish to also start by drawing our attention to recent writings and ideas emanating from a very admired player in the field of philanthropy. The names are Darren Walker, and she recently wrote something called Generosity and Justice, or actually the actual title is From Generosity to Justice. And she says a new gospel of wealth. Now, that means that more to generosity, giving must also be centered around promoting social justice. And for me, that is when I look at just generations and justice, that's where I would like to situate our conversation today. Generations and justice, although Darren says from generosity to justice. And she argues that giving should not just be about I have, so I give, but it should be I give because I have a cause. It should be more beyond that you have, and therefore you give, but the more centered on the reason why you give. And allow me also then to revisit the definition of philanthropy, first of all, and say that philanthropy has its roots in the Greek term philanthropos, which means love humanity. And therefore, I believe that given this background, love for humanity, social entrepreneurship is a form of philanthropy. Because these days we have like entrepreneurship for social impact, okay? So I think that philosophy behind philanthropy is about the love for humanity and the need to sustain humanity. And the way to sustain humanity is to give, to address the needs of humanity. Today in modern day, philanthropy also means charity. you know, Charity. And I've always made a joke and said, one day I would love to meet this girl called Charity. Everyone says, I'm giving my profits to charity. Oh, I have, you know, this gift, I want to give it to charity. So I'm always saying, I one day want to meet this girl called Charity so that I can share a bit of what she's receiving from everyone. That's just a joke, but this girl Charity is very, very lucky. It's also certainly closely associated with the super rich and generosity. So it's somehow, philanthropy is wrongly, I think, in my view, associated with the super rich and their generosity. So if you are rich, you can give. Being rich does not mean that you must give anyway, but it is, in my view, very wrong that it is associated with self-gratitude as a reason for giving. And somehow people feel like, oh, I feel nice because I helped a stranger, I donated money to a charity organization, I volunteered my time to an individual organization or a certain cause. And it means like majority of the philanthropic practice is leading into self-gratitude. And my take is different. I should say that philanthropy should be certainly not exclusive to the rich, therefore not having only a monetary value to it. It includes, for example, the measure of the time, talent, and treasure, especially in the African context. And again, when we talk about time, talent, and treasure, it brings us closer to a conversation on and with youth around philanthropy. And therefore, in this regard, if you allow me, I will also outline, because we're going to discuss systems, the measure or forms of philanthropy that we operate with and how they can fit the agenda of youth and giving. We have, first of all, the vertical forms of philanthropy. This is, for example, giving by foundations or family trusts and foundations, giving by corporate foundations, for example, and giving by high net worth individuals like the super rich that Dangote is of this world, and one day probably Ivan Atuyambe, the private and public foundations, of course, to spotlight, but just a few. Well, unfortunately, the spotlight of giving is mostly shining on this category of philanthropy. This is the ones that take the glory. But what are we not paying attention to is what I would love to end with for this round. And this is where the system change should start targeting. One, the horizontal forms of philanthropy, as opposed to the vertical. So top of society give to below of society. That is vertical. But the horizontal is at any level of society, people give to each other. And this is highly neglected. Why am I arguing that system change should focus on highlighting and spotlighting this form of philanthropy? One is because it is needs-based. It seems to be, that is one. But two, it seems to be more organic. It also seems to be rooted in the needs and understanding of society. And in the end, it ends up being authentic and inclusive. And there are just a few examples of this. For example, we have in societies where agricultural corporates or cooperatives for smallholder farmers who bring everything they have together to do farming together, pool resources together for the good of the prosperity of every small or local farmer. Now, if you give, let's say, fertilizer, local fertilizers from your small garden or your small compound, this is not considered giving, but you are giving to a farmer's group to prosper together. The second one is rotational savings and clubs in our local communities. Resources rove within a given social grouping at an interval, and everyone has a chance to receive, and in the end also gives back. This is resources pooled together. Everyone sacrifices from what they have to make and help others succeed, and in the end, all of us succeeding together. The last one is mutual service aid, for example, community building projects, contributions, you know, from skills to energy to time to money. In Tanzania, for example, this is a very common practice. When you need a school, a community school, you begin with what the community can put together. And when you have reached a certain level, you report the project to the government, and then the government takes up the project. These kind of forms of giving are not really documented and highlighted. And the systems should change to spotlight this kind of giving. But there's something I forgot and I want to mention: traditional loaning. This is related to rotating of saving clubs. It includes, for example, loaning of cattle. I come from a cattle keeping community, for example. They loan cattle to each other, and then they also loan each other productive resources in their own locality. And in the end, this practice leads to the prosperity of everyone. And therefore, I would like to say that the youth are part of this society that gives to each other almost on a daily basis, but only when someone from outside that community gives a little bit much more in terms of cash value, then they are the ones who have given. But then we forget the fabric of society of the African Ubuntu of you are because I am because you are, therefore we are. And for me, policies and systems to facilitate philanthropy for youth should focus on this kind of system change, to put in place a mechanism at policy level, a mechanism at society arrangement or leadership level to facilitate this kind of communal giving that has sustained society for a while. But when we are documenting, it's not shining enough. It's not, very little is known about it. And therefore, it's as if society is needed, but society can actually sustain itself through this kind of arrangement. For now, I want to end there. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivan. I am very delighted from all, with all what I heard from you, because it goes in the same line with what the keynote speaker of yesterday said and the keynote speaker of today. All mentioned about the noble purpose of philanthropy, because in Africa, philanthropy is actually linked to receiving money. They neglect, they really neglect and refuse to spotlight the horizontal philanthropy, which is more about giving, even giving knowledge through mentorship, giving services through volunteering for them. If you don't give money, you've not helped. That's not charity unless you give money. So we have to really go back to the noble purpose of philanthropy. Thank you very much, Ivan. This proves that we're really on the same wavelength in Africa. So we just need some sort of coordination to have the Africa we want. So I don't know, Dr. Stigmata, Diane was not able to really express herself because of translation or interpretation issues. So I don't know if she can get back to the first question and give us a view. It's like we're going to have a translator who is going to assist, even if it is not automatic, or at least we're going to get what she said. I believe she has a lot to tell us, and it will be unfair if we leave here without getting what she has to share with us today. Diane, can you tell us again what your
Vanessa,
take
eu acho
was
que a gente
on
pode seguir para pergunta
on the
2 e aí eu posso conectar com
we
a
can move on to the second
dois.
question, and then we proceed with what we have to do for today.
communication is really a big problem. Can you see how we are just
Diana, can you hear?
because of language barriers? I'm not getting what Diane is saying.
No, she says, can we go to the second point?
To the next question, but before that, I would love to
Nós
welcome
podemos ir
all.
para o ponto número 2 e eu posso conectar essa minha resposta do ponto número 1 com a número 2, porque está tudo dentro do contexto.
Okay, thank you very much. Good, thank you so much, Jan, for your understanding. So before we move to the second question, I would love to welcome all those who are joining us now and tell them that they can use the chat box at any moment to share their point of view on this theme of today, which is changing systems, technology, innovation, and youth philanthropy. So we're going to move to the next question. When we're doing all these conversations before the Youth Summit, we spoke about how important environment was in enabling philanthropy in Africa. So moving to the second question, I would love to know, or we, including the participants and all those following us, would love to know from our dear panelists, how can an enabling environment be fostered in order to unlock the potential role of youth in the development of domestic philanthropy and social impact entrepreneurship? So did you get me, Diane? I'm seeing you twisting your face, so I don't know whether. Are you okay? So can you get the floor and you just associate the two questions?
Pergunta, na verdade.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start with you then. So can you just
Se você
start with the first question and just answer the second one?
Você consegue traduzir para mim a pergunta?
Yeah, she said she was asking about the second question. She said that you could ela está perguntando sobre o segundo ponto. Então, você disse que era responder do primeiro ao segundo ponto.
A Vanessa fez uma...
Podemos mover. Podemos ir ao segundo ponto. Você pode responder
at once so that we can move ahead with the other panelists. Is it possible? Is it something you can do like right now?
Entendi. Mas eu não entendi nada do que ela falou, porque você não conseguiu traduzir para mim. Então...
Não, ela está a falar da primeira questão. Ela dizer, pode começar, uma vez que você não começou, pode começar a responder a primeira questão e move para a segunda. A primeira questão. Sim.
If it's possible, if we have the Portuguese translator, if it's possible for him to be highlighted, then maybe they can be speaking side to side. As Diane is speaking, the Portuguese translator can be translating. She says a line, the Portuguese comes in. She says a line, the Portuguese comes in.
Yes,
so even as you are
possible.
speaking,
she can go ahead.
Diana, pode continuar, Diana. Pode apresentar a primeira questão, pode apresentar.
Mas, na verdade, eu queria entender o que foi que a Vanessa falou antes, porque ela falou antes de eu falar
o primeiro ponto é...
Não, eu acho que a gente não está conseguindo se entender aqui na tradução. Deve ser isso. Eu não sei exatamente como é que a gente consegue avançar.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Então, ela vai repetir a questão. A minha questão é como é que a filantropia e a prática... Então, como é que a filantropia... Aquela primeira questão que você me apresentou ontem, essa que ela colocou agora. Yeah. Responder a primeira questão.
Okay.
Okay, let me just switch to English. Now I will be speaking English so that you can help them.
Yeah. Tá, obviamente, a gente está em dois contextos diferentes, né? O Brasil e muitos outros países africanos, e obviamente existem algumas similaridades, porque quando a gente fala em filantropia,
is the way we talk about philanthropy in Africa. When we talk about philanthropy, we talk about an action, a huge action, but how it does move within a Brazilian context. So I'll be focusing in Brazilian context. Obviously, as I spoke in the beginning, I like to think, why do we practice philanthropy? Why do we become social entrepreneur? This is the first point that I like to address. People come together to practice philanthropy because there is a problem that causes a problem within that. They come together to bring a solution to that problem. So as a philanthropy as a term, this and philanthropic action has been taking place for a long time. So when we think how the communities have never had rights, duties, or services, these problems also have always developed through philanthropic practices. Before the emergence of the term philanthropy, people have been practicing philanthropy. We had been practicing this charity since a long time ago, before the introduction of the term. So it's our neighbor that is helping another neighbor. When we talk about agriculture, people who have a different technique, and then donate this technique from and then receive from others. So we see that the essence of the social development is the root of the society. So why do I talk about solidarity? Because it has to do with what is one of the base of social philanthropy. I'm doing social philanthropy to reach a certain need within a society. So this philanthropy, it collaborates for change within a society. Who does philanthropy? Actually, it's not the person who give money, but the massive actions like transforming actions. So this is based on what we do, not only money. So all the organizations that are here, philanthropy, we have to disconnect this fake idea that my community is only developed because it came a finance or a sponsor to support this. No, we should start thinking that this change, that this work that we should be taking, this page that we want to rewrite, is a page that is another page, is being written by somebody who's live, not someone who looks from above. What do I think as philanthropy can facilitate the participation and the change, social changes? We have different successful stories within the communities. I'm talking about communitary anthropology with you. So this is what I've been experiencing, the kind of work I've done. This is my daily work. So I bring concrete things, how our society, how our community in our country develops itself, that it is more, it's a concrete, it's a result of a concrete person of people rather than from companies or sponsors. So we are bringing a concept that is the philanthropy practicer. So we have this term with this idea, and then we do not attain. It's an important point of this action because philanthropy is not only a term, but it's an action that when applied in our daily base, it thinks that public policies should be elaborated or changed. It is not an action that it's created, but it's an active, it's a practical action that in terms of helping others. It's an action that one community, a certain community, it may get some services. It is not only an initial function, it's an action that is a process. It does not begin or end, it's a processual action. So we should understand philanthropy not only according to Ivan, not only as an idea, but it's an action. So philanthropists have a structure. So we need to restructure everything, not only to talk in a superficial idea. So for me and Mashud Bashada, it's a group of her. So philanthropy is not only an action, but it's in a nuclear that it's aiming to change the reality of a community. So we need to understand and philanthropy not as a millions of people, but it's as an action that touches everybody, mainly that person that gave just a cent. So we should value that person because he did his best. And then it made people, facilitated the process to bring people different. So what society we need to see? Where are we heading to? And this is what makes sense to me. It doesn't matter the value that we give, but the action that is taken.
Wow, that was very powerful. We had it was worth trying and struggling to have to fix all these technical issues so that we can get what Diane had to say. And from what she says, philanthropy really cuts across. You see, she gave an example from Brazil. Philanthropy is not, before the word itself was coined, it was something that was already in our spirits, in our DNA, something that we had been doing, but because we were not spotlighting it before our colonizers, let me say, came, people don't pay attention to it. Philanthropy is more of an action, a way of living than a word or a term. So I'm really appreciative of, she shared how it is going on in Brazil, but from what she said, it's almost what is going on in Africa. So that's what I was saying about conversation, because when we have these conversations, we learn from each other. And at one moment you realize that the same flaws that you're having in your country, others are having it in their own countries. And by conversing with them, you can learn from their good practices and see how best to implement it in your own country. So thank you so much, Diane. So I don't know whether you can just, with the same energy and the same spirit, dive into the second question. We are happy to have you so that we can just continue with the other panelists. I don't know if that is possible, that you respond to the second question, which is the importance of an enabling environment to promote the unlocking of potential, the potential role of youth in the development of domestic philanthropy and social impact entrepreneurship. And while Diane is answering, I would love all the participants tell us what your take on this particular theme. Use the chat box, tell us what you have to say, ask questions to the panelists. At the end of the session, we can have some few times for the panelists to answer to all your questions. So Diane, just go ahead so that we can move ahead with the other panelists. Can you please tell us your take on the second question? Thank you.
I like this second question. I will give this space. I like this second question because it establishes a connection to my first answer. Why do I think? I'm talking in a concrete place of Brazil. When we think about philanthropy, we always think about a formal practice. So here in Brazil, for example, the youth has always been seen as a problem. So we have we dedicated a space for him to say that we need an action so that he can quit to become a problem. So it started from there. So every time I think about philanthropy, I think since he's in a formal character, a youth has seen as a problem, has no space, has no space to occupy in this philanthropy. I've been always think about that. On the other side, there's another question such as, we need to think what kind of a space and power the youth is occupying, that instead of becoming a problem, instead of to change them not to become a problem, but for them to become the agent of change that we desire to see in our communities. So for me, it is, how can we transform the space that we have so that they can become a place where these young people can come not only to learn, but to develop themselves, their abilities. Because here we understand that we need to invest in young people so that they can discover themselves and improve their abilities. So how do we think we should go about it? So we need to transform them as the social transformers, as leaders, not only of the future, but they must be or become of the present moment. So what can we do? And the question is, when we look at the problem, social problem that we have, this social problem that we have, they do not affect everybody, but where is the youth to help to solve them? We need to stop understanding the youth or the young people as a problem, but we need to look at him as an agent of the transformation, of a change, in order to not thinking the future, no, but within the school, in the community, among friends, in a city, in every place. These young people must be, to give him a space to become an agent of change. But someone can ask me, John, how is philanthropy connected to that? But we're talking about philanthropic action. With the 29 years, Regina with the 50 years. So we can only practice communitary philanthropy if we are connected. We should think on a youth philanthropy. So this is the question that we should think here. How can it become possible? How can we develop a youth philanthropy in this present generation so that we cannot live in the traditional philanthropy? I'm not saying that youth, the older people, they are not able to work, but I need us to address this problem as now. How can we do from the network that we have, organization that we have, develop a philanthropy, a youth philanthropy so that we can enable that the young people should think on the importance of this cooperation for the change of our reality.
Thank you so much, Jen, for this question, because what you mentioned is what most youths around the world, including African youths, face. The fact that they're not given access to opportunities, the fact that they're not given the spaces to express themselves because they are termed maybe as a nuisance or as disturbances, or they say they lack the experience to occupy certain positions. But how do they gain the experience if they are not given the space, they're not given an enabling environment to be able to achieve their goals? Because when you see youth that are doing a lot of background or underground work, you understand that if they are given the space to put into practice or the resources to do what they have in mind, then the Africa we want is going to come faster than what we think. So I don't know, I'm not seeing Femben anymore. I was about to give her the floor for this second question about the enabling environment for the fostering of domestic philanthropy. So if she's not around, are you around, Femben? Okay, thank you. I was not seeing you. So tell us about how it goes in Ethiopia or whatever, wherever you have been to and whatever you've learned from your experience as a professional. What is your take about the importance of environment on enabling domestic philanthropy led by youths? Thank you.
Individuals have been hindered because of policies not to operate in their own countries, and there was a heated discussion on this. So after the discussion, I left that platform with a question in mind: are policies hindering the growth of entrepreneurship and digitalization in Africa? Because from the stories that I heard from my fellow comrades, they have been facing problems regarding policies. It has been hindering them to come up with social entrepreneurship ideas, to come up with new technology ideas and digitalization when it comes to the problems that they're trying to overcome. So this is a question that I had in mind, and I want everyone to live with this question: are policies in your individual countries hindering the growth of entrepreneurship and digitalization? I would love to hear your answers in the chat. So the first thing that I would appreciate or that I would suggest is policy change. on different aspects, especially in many of our countries, we have restrictive laws rather than a progressive laws, which hinders our ideas to be a philanthropist or a social entrepreneur. I can give you an example. In my country, whenever we're planning to establish an organization or an initiative that works on these issues, we're always facing a problem regarding to policies. We're told this is not allowed in this country, and because of this and that policies, your way is not going to be accepted. So policy change, when we say policy change, it needs to be with a deep and researched and expert knowledge policy change. And it's not something that only allows, for example, it can say a policy allowing a youth or an individual organization to come and work on these topics, but it doesn't go beyond that. When people are trying to establish those initiatives, it's always stopping them at some point, and then it will need another time to discuss those and overcome those. So when we say policy change, we need a deep and very expert knowledge policy change, and especially including youth policymakers when these policy changes are happening. This is one of my suggestions. And the second one is whenever an individual or an organization is planning to do a philanthropic activity or any social entrepreneurial activity, we're always hindered by fundings or resource. I can tell you my personal experience, for example. I started an initiative called School for Street Children. So here in Addis, we have several street children who lives on the street, and these street children are not getting education at all. So my project started working on educating this street children. So I had a whole proposal laid out and everything, but because of resources and fundings to start the initiative, and also because of the policies that I already mentioned earlier, I was unable to start it at an individual level. So to an organization or to a government office, so that they can take it and escalate it to a bigger level, at least so those street children can get proper education and other facilities. So the second one is availability of funding and resource. The third one is we need to create philanthropic networks or support organizations amongst African countries, amongst international community, and even within a country. We need to have that kind of support that we can share whenever there is a hindrance, whenever there is a problem, how to tackle it, how to create solutions and all those. So we need to create these networks and support organizations. And the last recommendation that I want to make is we need to work on the mindsets of the youth, starting from childhood. So philanthropic activity is something that that you can learn since your childhood, seeing what your parents do, seeing what the community does, something that you learn from a young age. So working on the mindsets of teenagers and also young adults, and onto how to exercise these topics. There are many reports that everyone can read if interested, especially those worked on NGOs and other by NGOs and other government officials, especially the very good one that I keep reading whenever it comes to philanthropy is how to promoting an enabling environment for philanthropy and civil societies. Very detailed things or very detailed topics on what I've shared earlier. So you can go ahead and read it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Femben. I am very, when you spoke about the last recommendation, changing the mindset of youths, I was like, wow, yes, you spoke my mind, because it is important that if you want change, maybe some of us are already maybe too old to change, I can just in quotes, but the younger ones who still have opportunities to learn right from the tender age about philanthropy and culture of giving, maybe we should start right from that from that level, so that they grow with that Ubuntu spirit in them already. And you asked the question about our policies in our countries hindering the progress of social entrepreneurship or philanthropy. That is honestly, I believe participants should answer this question, because if I talk about my country, Cameroon, is true. So many policies. In fact, in Africa, corruption has overshadowed many policies. That means people come about the vote laws, but at the implementation level, it no longer works, because corruption has blocked almost everything. You have a project you want to implement, but the hindrance and the bottlenecks are so many that you end up being discouraged and giving up. Meanwhile, that project was a project that could bring about like a major change in your community. I'm happy that that's why I mentioned that most of the problems we have in our countries almost the same. So it's good to have these conversations almost constantly so that we can learn from each other to see how best we can move ahead with the agenda of changing Africa and having the Africa we want. So I'm going to hand over the floor to Ivan. I'm calling Ivan and Ivan at the same time. All is the same person. I want him to tell us his take about this second question. While waiting Ivan to join, please use the chat box, APN social media, tweet about this event, let your friends and family know about this major and insightful event. You can use the hashtags for the day. We have APN Youth Summit 21. That's APN in capital letters, Youth Summit 21. We have Giving for Change. We have Giving and Power. Use the hashtags, tweet, talk about the event everywhere. Ivan, can we have you on board? Can you tell us what your take is on environment and domestic philanthropy? Are you with us, Ivan?
Yes, with you. Can you hear me?
Voila, very well. 5 on 5.
All right, thank you. So let me again start with probably a step back. What could be the challenges to philanthropy today? And I think that number one is the challenge of exclusivity. Now, exclusivity, as I said in the start, is around glorifying a certain class of givers because of their status in society. Because Michelle Obama, for example, has put out a cause, everyone wants to give. In 24 hours, they have raised $5 million. It's not because my cause is not a cause really, but it's because I'm a nobody. And it's not that her cause is better than other causes, but it's because she's a somebody. So that is a challenge of exclusivity in philanthropy, and it is yielding inequality. So there is inequality in the giving space, especially from the demand to the supply side. Then there is limited vision and usefulness. Limited vision and usefulness means that the idea of giving and philanthropy, because it's sometimes applied in different contexts based on status and others, it tends to lose its steam in certain circles and doesn't get much of attention. It is also structured to be too corporatized and eliminates the common popular givers who actually live daily as givers. So it's too corporatized, and it's MTN giving to serve flood victims, Red Cross collecting from Safaricom to save refugees, and you'd never ask who is actually giving to MTN. It's a common airtime buyer. And this is where I see the disconnect. We focus on the big corporates and forget the real everyday giver. And there is a big challenge of undocumented successes and opportunities for givers. So undocumented successes of local giving and everyday giving, I think it's a major, major challenge. The stories we read about philanthropy is this guy, like my very good friend Mo Ibrahim, who has done a lot of business with telecom industry, and then decided to start the Mo Ibrahim Foundation with an endowment. And those are the people you read in books. Huh? So who is gonna document the Vanessas and the Dianes and their small ways? For example, I have been giving to young girls to go to school myself using my own salary. It's not, no one has written a book about me. Yeah. So now this is for me, the disconnect. So Dr. Stigmata and us need to start working on a tracer study, a tracer journey of these unsung heroes who sustain society with the little they have. Let me transition to question 2, which is the cause of the session number 2 as well. I think that the way forward is around, and I think Diane has talked about it, and the other colleague that spoke from Addis Ababa, Febin Mongesha, has also spoken about it. The idea around building knowledge or a knowledge base so that young people can be educated about the different forms of social impact entrepreneurship. Therefore, so they can know that giving does not really have to take the form of money or cash changing hands. But there are so many ways that they are contributing already to society. And they should be educated to know that that is also giving, and encourage that and encourage that and do that and do that and more of it. Because then that means the organic way of society giving to society. The second one is, as I said before, we need an intentional embarkment on documentation and popularization of these undocumented forms of philanthropy that do not necessarily glorify the rich and the conventional form of what is otherwise seemingly widely celebrated as the right way of giving. So by giving more in cash, you are the giver. But we need to really embark on a journey of tracing the other forms of giving, documenting them, and where possible, popularizing them as the ways to sustain society organically. And this is very common with young people, by the way. When I was a university student, I started actually philanthropic practice in high school. I was giving my pocket money to the needy children. But this is not even written in biography, in my own biography. Yeah? No, even those who I gave do not publish a Facebook article about me. And I gave so many. They are now big people running big companies, but they have forgotten that one day they were about to be chased from school. And because I had a little more, I gave them the money to complete their quota, the last quarter of school fees. Or they were hungry and their parents did come for visiting day because I was always lucky. I shared my pocket money with them. This is not documented. So Africans, especially the youth community, we need to learn to celebrate each other's actions of positive impact. And we don't do this often. And I see that in this community, there is a possibility that we can start inculcating this culture, because I know that comrades like Muira and others that work in this network are really very generous people who like to celebrate others' successes. And I think we should lead this revolution of documenting what Mengesha is doing in Addis Ababa and what Diane is doing in Brazil, and write about it and promote it, as opposed to waiting for when the Ford Foundation has signed a grant agreement with the African Philanthropy Network. So this is the challenge I have. Then let's also redefine and retarget the role and use of digital tools and platforms that aid or facilitate philanthropy to fit organic, mostly horizontal forms of giving or philanthropy. So the tools that are in place, the internet-aided tools, do not have the capacity to reach and to aid the daily giving practice. For example, if I want to contribute to your wedding and I'm in Tanzania, and if you want to start a GoFundMe campaign for your wedding, you can't unless you are based in the US or somebody is based in the US and starts the campaign for you. But what about this multitude of everyday desire to support each other, but we have to depend on practical traditional ways of getting support to each other. So technology has not evolved to meet the needs of an everyday typical giving context. And I think that there are also exclusive rules, that govern giving. For example, this requirement around 501c3, American Charity Qualification. This doesn't really facilitate the nominal givers in the youth community. So first of all, the givers don't qualify for any tax deductible in Africa. You give
Ivan,
at your own pace.
Can you just go a little bit faster? We are running out of time and we still have a last question.
Yes.
Can you just...
So there are no incentives, and policy infrastructure is only encouraging foreign giving, and therefore we need to see, for example, these GoFundMe platforms. We need to see how can we as youth innovate our own platforms, because GoFundMe is not, for example, very compatible with our own situation. Now, finally, my dear Vanessa, think of how much time youth spend and the skills they render for unpaid internships, for example. Unpaid internships. Everyone wants interns for their skills, but nobody wants to pay them. If they don't have skills and they don't deserve pay, why are you running for them? This is the question I've been asking, especially international organizations. Therefore, system change, and these are the kind of reforms that we can start working around to make sure that all forms of giving are equally recognized and equally rewarded. I submit and thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Ivan. I'm always happy when you take the floor, because what you say is always, you really give in-depth analysis of every question you are asked, and whatever you give as answer is always having a practical point of view. I'm really happy. And I must comment about the celebrating of young people's, or celebrating people's actions, because people focalize on those big people. When they do philanthropy, that's when people celebrate them. But we have underneath, we have even our parents who have been doing philanthropy for long, but nobody has mentioned them. And I think this is one of the goals of APN, every time trying to celebrate youth philanthropy by bringing young people, but by sitting like we are sitting now and conversing, we get to know each other, and I get to know what you are doing in your country. I get to know what Diane is doing in Brazil. I get to know what Femben is doing in Ethiopia. It's a form of celebrating each of you people's action in your different communities. So I don't know if you have a little bit of time again, just to tackle the last question. We're going to be very brief on that question, because it's something that we would not want. You are almost running out of time. So I hope you can quickly answer this question about, we've been talking about change the whole of today, change. And I think the COVID-19 crisis brought out some of the challenges most African countries have, and brought out also the creative and innovative spirit of most youths in Africa, because during this period, many youths in Africa proved to Africa that if they were given the space or the opportunity, they were going to do great things. They were going to build resilience and able to tackle future crises, because it's all about adapting to change and making sure that whenever we have a challenge, we are able to tackle it in our different communities. So I'd love to know, do you know of any, I'll just go straight, Ivan, as you're already on board, you just answer the question since you are even running out of time. Do you know any youth-led innovation for resilience building and building back by and with youths? And what impact have this innovation achieved, and how further can it be supported for greater impact?
I tried to find something like in that regard, and I concluded that they are there, but they are not documented and they're not easy to find. And this is, I would like to challenge us in this forum to take this as a gap and embark on a documentation project. Dr. Stigmata and us can work together on a project to trace and document the COVID context initiatives. In the ULEAD Africa, we have started something called Youth Enterprise Accelerator Awards that we are trying to promote as a response to COVID-19, damages on economic and livelihoods of young people in the East and Southern Africa region. We have tried to promote it through individual giving and corporate giving. We are still trying actually struggling to find the resources or the money we need, but we piloted it in 2020. And this is also an initiative aimed at assessing the COVID-19 impact or economical on young people and asking for innovation or ideas that might revert this economic impact. I have seen also there's something called 40-40, 100 Days of Smile, young ladies who came up with helping children who were very unfortunate and the families were not affording food, mainly in Kampala. And I've also seen churches and other places of worship putting in place we are together initiatives, collecting food and other items and delivering to needy families. All these are not documented. And I think that this is, for me, a gap for us to develop a project around, putting in place a central portal, a central portfolio where people can either report their giving initiatives and also get more support to scale it up. And that's all I can say for now, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Thank you. I see you have a lot to tell us, but time is cutting us short. So I'm going to give the floor to Feben and after to Diane to also tell us about any youth-led innovation for resilience building in their own community, and the challenges and how best the innovations have worked. If you can be very brief, I'm going to be very, very delighted. Feben, are you with me? Can you just tell me? If it's just one or two, we just love to know.
Thank you. As Ivan said, most of them were not registered or recognized here as well in Addis or in Ethiopia. But the major two things that youth did out of their own heart initiative was so to hinder the spread of the virus, there were two tactics the youth used. The first one is to go out into remote areas where there's no social media or mainstream medias, and to spread the word that the pandemic is here and how it's transmitted in the methods and guidelines to protect oneself and the society. So the first thing was that, and the second one was a social media campaign to reach to every people, to reach to those who use social media about the virus and other methods as well. And the second one is while the pandemic erupted, I was studying in the United Kingdom, and in the UK also we had this one actually was a very good initiative because it was registered and done by the NHS. So youth were giving services to elderlies, running out to groceries and essential areas. And as we've discussed earlier, philanthropy is not only about giving money, it's also about many other things, especially sharing your times as well. So this was some of the innovative things that the youth was doing during these trying times. Thank you.
We all agree that youths really unveil their capacities to adapt or prepare for future crises during the COVID-19 period. So I'm going to give the floor to Diane. Diane, are you with me?
Sim.
Yeah.
Diane, I would love to know, can you just tell me about just one be brief. Youth-led innovation for resilience building and building back with youth, especially during the COVID-19 period.
Aqui,
Vanessa, please, before Diane takes over, just to remind you all that your session has come to
there is
term.
interference. There is interference. Antes da Vanessa terminar, ela entrar, gostaria que temos poucos minutos para depois fazermos a súmula desse. Obrigado. Diana, prepara de forma sintética, uma coisa bonita aí.
Aqui nós tivemos grupo de jovens que criou
Here in Brazil, we had a group of young people. They were attending people with COVID-19.
Eram 8 jovens em 8
We had 88
a cidade, né? E de dentro da comunidade fazer mapeamento de famílias.
They were documenting everything of families of people that were
então as pessoas podiam ligar para eles. Eles mapeavam
concerned, they were registering everything, doing the registration of everything.
I believe I just would want to know about one. We are running out of time, so I'm not cutting you short. You can just keep continue conversation. Maybe in the chat box, but I was happy to have all you as panelists. I mean, this session was fire, and there was no time even for me to read the chat box. I was so much absorbed by all what the panelists were saying and what participants were saying in the chat box that I did not even see time going. I mean, we can all agree with me that this session was one of the most wonderful sessions I've ever had in any of these webinars I've attended on APN. I wish to thank the African Philanthropy Network. I thank Dr. Stigmata for the platform she constantly offers to youth to express themselves, to share their point of view and to learn from each other. I am glad and I hope we can continue this conversation. It is not over. There's a second conversation for today, so stay tuned. And let's continue with the conversation on youth and power. Let's shift the power. Let's give for change and continue to work for the Africa we want. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ansel, for your time. Thank you very much.